Assemblyman Ken Blankenbush responds after our story about Carthage Central having more than 10 times the amount of savings on hand than what the state allows. Monday, we told you how Carthage has $34 million in what the state comptroller calls a rainy day fund. The state says that account should be 4% of next year's budget. Carthage sits at nearly 50%. Superintendent Jennifer Primo told us it is a result of federal stimulus money and federal impact aid received for educating the military community. Blankenbush, a Carthage school taxpayer, takes into consideration the stimulus and military money and says he is confident Carthage will spend down the money in a fiscally responsible way.